Hello, and welcome back to How to Change the World, the podcast that equips change makers with the tools, insight, and inspiration to drive real impact. I am Catherine Alonso. At Javelina, we believe, or maybe we know, that stories change the world. Stories shape how we connect, how we relate, how we engage. But when we think of that word story, what is it that goes into it? It's certainly the words, the beginning, the middle, and the end. But when you're thinking about being an organization that drives change or drives impact in your community, your story is not only shaped by the words that you use, but also all of the visuals that go along with it. Your logo, your color palette, and all of the places that visual identity lives, your website, your materials. And that first impression that a potential supporter or a potential client gets when they first interact with your organization, whether it's in person or online, is really, really vital. And it really matters that all of your visuals, your messaging is telling an intentional story that helps you connect with the people you want to connect with. And one of the ways that organizations strengthen their story is by rebranding. And one of the things we do at Javelina is rebrand for our clients. It's one of our favorite things to do. And it's one of the very best, most effective ways that you can update your story and make sure that it is resonating with the people that you want to reach. We get asked all the time, when should I rebrand? What goes into the process? How much does it cost? And so what we thought we would do is have a couple of recent clients on to talk about their experiences so that you don't only hear it from me, but you hear it from the people who've really gone through it, why to do it, when to do it, and what to expect from it. This episode is structured a little differently than what you're normally used to. Up front, we have two clients to talk about their experiences. And then later in the episode, we'll have a different client to share her story. And the three social change leaders that we're having on the episode today all tell really important stories in their work. And they come from really different sectors. One is working in an organization that's focused on community safety and criminal justice reform. Another supports young people that faces higher rates of poverty and adversity to make sure that they can live their best lives. And another is focused on conservation advocacy and protecting our precious natural resources. But they are all focused on the thing that is the most important, which is telling the story that changes the world. So first of all, welcome so much to Caroline Isaacs and Farah. Oh, Farah, how do you pronounce your last name?
It's pronounced Figner, like it should be spelled Figner.
I meant to. That's so embarrassing for me. I meant to ask you that because as I was prepping, you and I have been working together for more than 5 years, and way more. And as I was prepping, I'm like, I don't know that I actually know how you pronounce Farah's last name because I never say it.
You know what? I have found myself in that position with so many people in my life. You know, when you work with somebody long enough and you realize that you've never said their last name out loud, it makes you really question things.
Well, embarrassing for me. So, Farah, let's start with you. Do you want to talk a little bit about your organization, New Pathways for Youth, what you do, and who you serve?
Yeah, I love that. So, my name is Farah Figner, and I am with New Pathways for Youth. New Pathways for Youth is a local nonprofit organization that's been here in the Valley serving local area teens who live in poverty and who've also faced multiple adversities in their lives. Our program connects youth who need support with one-to-one mentors, so volunteers from the community. We support them in their personal development, in their academic journey, and we also support their families so that our youth can find the best footing so that they can fulfill all of their potential and eventually realize that they can be confident in the decisions they make for their future and they get to live their lives with joy and purpose.
Awesome. Caroline, how about you? Tell us about your work and what you do and who you serve.
Sure. So I'm Caroline Isaacs with Just Communities, Arizona, and we are reimagining community safety one neighborhood at a time. So our mission is to find, uplift, and replicate holistic models for community safety outside the criminal punishment system. We invest in neighbors and community-based organizations in historically under-resourced and over-incarcerated communities. In Maricopa County, our work is essentially distributing grant funding through the Maricopa County Health Department and their share of justice reinvestment funding. That's from Prop 207 that legalized marijuana. And in Tucson, we invest in what we call community safety incubator projects. So these are small, hyper-local, short-term projects led by members of a given community and designed by them. And the purpose is essentially to increase safety and well-being as they define it for people in their communities.
Wonderful. So, Caroline, let's start with you. I mean, you guys are both doing incredibly important community work that shapes lives, not only the lives of the people you serve, but the people doing the work as well, no doubt. And so I'm curious, Caroline, for you guys, what prompted Just Communities AZ to pursue a visual rebrand, and why at that particular moment?
So we were in a transition for 30 some years of my professional life. We had been the Arizona office of an international NGO, the American Friends Service Committee, which is based in Philadelphia, which does a incredible array of social justice work nationally and internationally. And our work in Arizona was focused on criminal justice reform. So policy level work, sentencing reform, dealing with the state legislature, prison oversight, prison conditions watchdogging, very macro. And it was just time for us to kind of leave the nest, as it were, move out of mom's basement and become an independent Arizona-based nonprofit. With that, we also did a huge pivot in terms of the focus of the work from this macro policy lens to a hyper local investment in what we lovingly refer to as the what instead, right? So everybody knows that the criminal punishment system that we have is not working. It's not making us safer. It's actually creating more problems and making certainly people of color and under-resourced people less safe. But we literally have no idea what else to do. We have no collective vision for what safety can look like. That's not that. And so that's really been our purpose, is let's just try different things with folks who are closest to the issues in their neighborhood. They will define that. So we were sort of rebranding and sort of just branding. In this kind of funny place where we knew who we used to be and who we wanted to become. And we weren't really either of those things yet. And it was actually a really incredibly helpful process, surprisingly. Like for me is like, I'm creating a nonprofit, like it's like on the checklist. I got to get a board and I got to get the seat, I got to file this paperwork, I got to get a logo. But actually the process of like asking these deep questions of who are you? Who are you trying to be? What could not have come at a better time, really.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I'm curious, Farah, to know a little bit more about the timing for you guys, because for you guys, the thing we worked on together wasn't actually a brand or a rebrand of your organization. It was of a program of your organization. So tell us a little bit about Level Up and what pushed the branding process and the timing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, Javelina's made a huge contribution towards our brand voice and our story and how we communicate to the public in terms of new pathways for youth. But what we realized after 30 something years serving kids is that new pathways for youth doesn't really resonate with teenagers. And I remember when that just kind of hit me squarely in the face. So we had a new CEO who came on board in, I want to say it was in 2022. And Karen Johnson, she said, one of the first things that we need to do is we need to come up with a brand for the program for these kids. And I'm thinking to myself, well, we've been New Pathways all along. Nobody's had any pushback on this. And then she said, but come on, Farrah, what kid wants to walk around with this orange and purple logo that says New Pathways for Youth?
And 0%.
Ouch.
Totally. And I thought about that for about half a second and was like, yeah, absolutely. Kids aren't excited or fired up, or at least I don't think that they are about that particular brand, but I do know that they're fired up about the impact that we're making in their lives, and they're fired up about the relationships that we're creating for them with their mentors. And so once I had my head around that, and I shifted my perspective from the name of our organization to start thinking about our programs as sub brands, that's when the possibilities just exploded in my mind for what this brand could be. I think the way that we've explained it is that we gave our signature program a name. It never had a name, and we gave it a name. I think another thing that made it a little bit difficult for me to wrap my head around it at first is because at the time, we only had one program. We were serving our youth through one specific program, and that was our one-to-one long-term signature level up program. And we were also thinking about expanding, and that meant that we were going to create new programs so that we could meet our youth where they're at. And so our Level Up brand, which brings youth into us, has now spun off into Level Up Academy. And so that's where we're taking our program out into the schools and into the community. And to get kids signed up and to get them excited about joining that program in school, same thing, right? If they're going to come up to one of our, expo booths and see New Pathways for Youth versus Level Up or Level Up Academy, they're going to be far more likely to engage with a brand that they can resonate with, but quite frankly, one that they just think looks cool and sounds cool.
Well, I think what you both have summarized so perfectly is that there's a lot of different reasons for rebranding, but ultimately, the brand is such a huge part of your ability to tell stories and reach people. And what really echoes through both of your answers to that first question is that they were both driven by the people that you serve and being able to connect and serve the people that you serve. And there was something, missing in the current structure, and you needed something different. So that sort of begs the obvious question. Let's start with you, Caroline. Is what was the hardest part of the process for you, internally or externally?
I think it was really how deep it was. I think I had this assumption that branding is about that superficial stuff. It's about how you looking cool, having the logo. But in order to do it effectively, you have to really touch the soul of your work and who you are as an organization. And that is also, I think, difficult for those of us in the sort of nonprofit space because you're so used to answering the question, what do you do? You're writing grant applications. You're like, we do this program and we have these outcomes and we do this thing and it generates that. And nobody asks you who you are. Who are we for? And thinking of the organization as an identity, as kind of almost like a living, breathing entity, right? That has personality as well as hopes and dreams and all of that stuff. So that shift for me was tricky because I kept going back to like, well, we got this program, well, we got that program, we do this thing over here. And it's like, no, that's not what I asked you. Going deeper, that was, and also because we were so new, we're like, I don't know yet. We're still trying to figure it out. But having to do that kind of soul searching and thinking broader than, we're going to go after this grant, we're going to do this program, and like this strategic plan sort of mindset was actually really helpful.
Farah, how about you?
Oh gosh, what was most surprising about the process? I think what was most surprising for me was kind of what Caroline alluded to. It's just not not just the superficial layers, not just like the expansive kit of branding materials, but the meaning behind it and how deep we needed to go in our research and understanding about who we are as an organization, and not only who are we trying to serve, but what are the messages that we're trying to tell to specific audiences. And going back to the need for the program brand, we realized New Pathways for Youth. One of my favorite parts of the process that we had with the youth was the focus sessions. So that was fantastic. I still refer to it when I'm thinking about our brand. The one quote that stood out to me when we had the kids look at the New Pathways brand and ask them, what are the words that come to mind when you see this? The first thing that was said was, this looks medically. They might not have had the exact right word for it, but man, that got the point across. And so I found that to be such a guiding light. And we followed that light. We implemented what we learned from our youth, and that helped us to get to a point where we could look at all of these different ideas and possibilities for our brand and end up landing on just the right one.
Mm. And Farah, has there been a moment for you since creating the Level Up brand where you thought, yeah, this is working. This is actually getting us to where we want to be?
I mean, yeah, I would say as soon as we launched the brand, it was just community feedback, the mentors, the youth. It was hard for us to keep up with the demand. And it's really cool when I see kids that are coming into our center for their monthly Power Up program, and they're wearing a Level Up shirt, or they've got a Level Up notebook. It takes me back to that conversation that we had with Karen in the very beginning. And she said, I will know that this works when I'm seeing kids serving as our brand ambassadors by wearing our swag. And man, that's what we see. And it still gives me goosebumps to think about not just that they're wearing it, but the meaning and intention that it took to get to that point. People always ask us, like, where do your kids come from? And honestly, a lot of our kids come into our program through word of mouth. They see other kids in their school or their community or their family that are doing well, that are getting to the point where they wish that they were. And so our kids share the Level Up program with one another. And, I might not be a teenager now, but I can tell you from my experience back then, I'd probably be a lot more apt to recommend my peers into a program that looks like it was designed for teens than one that looks like it was, I don't know, designed for the donors.
Mm-hmm. Caroline, how about you? Was there like a moment where you knew that the new brand was working for you and meeting your goals?
Yeah, I mean, I just remember the excitement internally at first when we were sort of presented with the logo. Because again, we were so new. It's like, we're a thing. and this is us. Like it felt like, yeah, that's us. Part of the piece about going deeper is getting from the what do you do to the why. I think with kids, they have finely honed BS detectors, right? But not just kids. Definitely kids, but not just kids, right? We're being sold stuff all the time. All the time. And you can tell when something is like just, AI slop or, some cut and paste thing. But when a visual or a statement or some text is able to actually speak to a vision that you hold of something being better, like the place you actually are trying to get to. And people can like touch that in a way and like resonate with that. Like, yeah, I want that too. And, you speak about stories, Catherine, and that really is like, that's how you're able to communicate the soul of your organization, the vision that you have for what you want for the community, what you want for the people that you work with, and for ourselves.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that, Caroline, that importance of going deeper, because one of the things that happens a lot when we're talking to potential clients is they'll be talking to us about what they're looking for. And very often the word just gets thrown in there. We just want a logo. We just need a refresh. It's like, it's not a lot of work. And I know, because I've been doing this a long time, that what the client means by that is, we don't have a ton of money to spend on this.
Yeah.
And so I completely get that. And we are always trying to structure our pricing so that it works with organizations that are working in social change and trying to put as many dollars as possible to that impact. And we also know that it's not just a logo, that going deeper to be able to create a visual identity that does justice to the important work that you're doing, it takes time. It takes time, it does take money, and it does take some deep reflection. Was there, for either one or both of you, was there a moment where you realized like, oh, this is actually maybe a bigger, more involved thing than I thought it needed to be, or that I thought it was?
Yes, there was a time when I realized it was a lot more involved than I thought it would be. And that would have been when we got so far through the project. We had finally landed on a name, on a tagline. We had identified our personas. We had created our brand voice and a brand guide around Level Up. And we had not even gotten to the logo yet. That was actually a separate part of the process. So it's like we were going through it and we're working and working, and I'm thinking, well, when are we going to get to the logo? And what I came to find out is that comes so much later in the process.
Thanks for that. Caroline, I'm curious, if you went back, if you had a do-over and you could just do the whole thing again, is there anything you'd do differently?
I don't think so. Again, the moment was tricky because we weren't really official yet. And so we were articulating a vision for an organization that we were still like building the bicycle while we're riding it, which we're still doing. We just never, that's kind of how we roll all the time. The focus of the program, while the vision is there, how we're doing that has shifted a little bit. And so we're adding to rather than throwing it out and starting over again. A lot of the communications that we developed early on were very broad, right? Mm-hmm. And now we can say, like, in this neighborhood, we did XYZ and it looked like this. And it's great to have those concrete examples. And I don't think we would have gotten there if we weren't able to have a cohesive identity to put out there and gain the trust of the partners that we needed to be able to begin the work.
Yeah. Farah, how about you? Would you do anything differently?
Honestly, the experience, it was great from the jump. If I was going to give advice to anybody, I would say to trust the process. Don't get married to your own ideas. Practice non-attachment in that area and be open. Trust the process, because the brand that is right for your organization, it's going to show itself. And when it does, everybody in the room is going to know it. And I think that was one of the best parts of the experience, was when we all kind of, wrote our answers down and then flipped the card at the same time. And there was so much consensus. And there was so much consensus because we had spent so much time being real and really digging deep into who we were and what was our purpose and what was the why behind it.
Caroline, how about you? Is there a piece of advice you'd give to somebody going through a rebranding process?
Yeah, I think take the time I think what you pointed to, Catherine, of like where it's stressful and we've all got too much stuff going on, and it's very hard to really dedicate the time. It's a huge investment in your future. So,
Yeah.
carving out that time to really engage, to trust the process, to have those conversations, to sit with things. Because again, this was a very different way for me of thinking about stuff. And it's a different way of communicating than what you're kind of trained to do, which is like, show me some data, lots of jargon and acronyms and theories of change. And this is like cutting through all of that stuff. And I think the sort of the focus group concept of like talk to everybody, not just the people in your organization. Definitely talk to the folks that you are working with and for. At the time, one of our staff, Tiara, would always refer to the Grammy test. And she's like, if my grandmother can accurately explain back to me what the heck I do at my job, we're set. And like, it is surprisingly hard to pass the Grammy test if you're in like social change and, you know, like all this kind of niche communication kinds of stuff.
Such an important measure.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, like talk to your Grammys.
And I love that, talk to your Grammys. And one of the things we do at Javelina specifically to pass the Grammy test is really stay away from language that we've become very used to in the social impact sector. The word empowered is the one that comes to mind. First of all, not that you can't ever use the word empowered, but you read most social change organizations' vision and mission statements, you're going to find the word empowered pretty easily. Things like empowered, fostering, connection, enable, words like that can be sort of people just tune out because they've heard this a million times, and we try to describe the organization and the work that you do to pass the Grammy test, but also not just that Grammy understands, but that Grammy's interested. She's like, "Oh, tell me more. This should be
Grammy
easy to
will
understand.
show up to your events.
Grammy will come to your events." Well,
Catherine, I don't know if you remember this, but at a certain point, we had a mission statement that had some language that was about empowering our youth so that they can unleash the possibilities of all possibilities for their futures, right? I know what that means, and I think that it is absolutely beautiful. But don't you think that saying that we're enabling our kids so that they can feel confident in deciding their own path and live their life with joy and purpose means so much more? That's part of the brand.
Well, and I think this is why rebranding is so important, is because language changes and organizations change, and a rebrand or a brand refresh for most organizations is going to be necessary probably every 15 to 25 years, with language updates in between, because language really evolves. And I think that's what you're tapping into, Farah, is that, maybe that language served new pathways at a particular moment. And then as things changed and goals changed and audiences changed, it just no longer made sense and it needed updating.
And we love it.
I'm glad that you love it.
Maybe the hardest part was helping other people in my organization to join me in the mind shift as we transitioned from being a program that didn't really have a name to a program that now does have a name. It required us renaming certain concepts and certain elements of our program. We have been using words in the program that had to be changed. I look back on it now and think, man, I can't imagine a time where we ever used any language that was different.
And that, I think, is what a successful rebrand should look like. That once you've gone through the weeds and the implementation and some of the pain points, and there are always pain points, as you get to the point where you think, how did we do what we do without this? And it should really feel, just like you both have said, it should feel like your very essence turned into words and images that capture not only what you do, but why you do it.
Just in thinking about the move away from like overused jargony phrases like empower and things like that, one of the things that we struggled with is the centrality of the word community in our name and what we do, because part of the reason that we do this work is because we have so little community. anymore, because community is a word that gets thrown around and most of us don't know our neighbors. We're not like actively part of a community the way that they used to be defined, and the way they are defined in like many other cultures in the world, just not here. So for us, part of the process too was reclaiming and redefining that word and making that central to what we do and saying like, this is the vision that we have for what this is, what it could be, what it maybe used to be in some places, what it still is in other parts of the world. That is where we're headed. But to really actively communicate that and not just have it be one of those throwaway words that like looks nice on a application, that takes work.
Well, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, Caroline, because it was similar with the Level Up brand, where knowing that we were aiming for teenagers, we went with the sort of video game motif. And we knew that this idea of leveling up is something that comes up in video games, but also relates to what the Level Up program promises and delivers for young people. And we knew that there was a lot of application of those kinds of concepts that could be threaded through additional programs or the existing program. It had this flexibility, but there did have to be this sort of definition of what that meant, that is what it meant in this context. And so I think that's one of the really important parts about messaging and branding is we all use different words like community, but they mean different things to different people.
Right.
And then what you do also need to do in your storytelling is tell your audience, this is what we mean by this word, and not shy away from words that might land differently with different audiences.
Indeed.
Yeah. So one thing, we've talked about all kinds of things. We've talked about how much of a process it is, that it takes time, that it's much deeper than you might think it might be. And so it stands to reason that the people that you do it with really matter. And my question is, anybody listening who's thinking about doing a rebrand, how should they choose a partner or an agency to work with? The obvious answer is hire Javelina. But if we're not going with hire Javelina, how did you guys go about sort of choosing who you partnered with? Caroline, let's start with you.
Like with everything we were doing at that point in our evolution, it was like talk to people that you trust and admire, whose stuff you like. And particularly for us, again, this is continues to be a challenge for Just Communities Arizona, is that we are not the average bear. So we're not like a service-based, client-based nonprofit agency. And so much of the field, a lot of consulting firms are really like, that's the majority of people that they work with, and that they're set up for that. So looking around to see who the other clients have been for a given firm, and are they working with organizations that are closer to yours? And then the flip side is, who do you know and who did they go with? Whose branding, messaging speaks to you in a way that you want to be able to speak to other people with your work. We're so fortunate to have like incredible helpers and mentors and folks that I was just constantly tapping into and saying like, I don't know how to do this. Please help me. And people are incredibly generous when you ask for stuff like that. But you know who your people are. Talk to your people.
Farah?
So I just have to say ditto to all of those things for sure. And I would add that it's just so important to make sure that you're working with an agency that gets your organization, that shares your values, right? We don't want an agency that's going to come in and try to change who we are. For the sake of the project, we want somebody who's going to come in and see all of the great things that we're doing, all of our goals, missions, all of our intentions, and just highlight those things to make us look great.
And really take the time to understand who you are. It takes time.
Yeah.
And not just to be like, okay, fill out this form and send us a check.
It takes time, and it takes outside perspective too. I think that was also such an important thing. Is a lot of us, we've been there for years. Yeah. And so having some outside perspective, man, that really challenged our own beliefs and helped us to get further down the road with that.
Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you guys so much for trusting us and our team to work with both of you to really develop and fine tune and elevate the stories of the work that you're already doing. It was our honor. And I love hearing from you both, but also just knowing that those brands are out there in the world, really connecting with the people that need them the most. Before we wrap up, I just have my usual quick speed round questions. Okay, so what is a great book that has informed your change making? Caroline?
Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown.
Farah?
Well, I just like to plug my friend Catherine Alonso. If you're able to see this, the Changemakers Toolkit. This is my most recent read that I read this on the plane on my way to Texas and back. Really great information and really cool stories of change makers. So thanks for bringing this to us, Catherine.
Thanks for plugging. I promise I didn't put you up to that. We'll have you back. Farah, who is one change maker that inspires you?
I'm going to have to say our CEO, Karen Johnson, she came into this organization with a lot of great ideas. And what I enjoy about Karen is that she is a partnership maker. She is out in the community and she's building relationships with other organizations that serve youth. So New Pathways is partnering with other leaders in the community to affect change more broadly. So that's something that I really, really admire. And also, she's one of these people who's like, we're not going to talk about it. Let's be about it. I look back and it's just amazing how much stuff we've done to level up our program and our youth and just the community in general. So I'm grateful to Karen Johnson.
Nice tie in there. I saw that level up pun. I liked it. Caroline, how about you? A change maker who inspires you?
This is a deep dive, but when I was a little baby activist, first moved to Tucson in the early 90s, I had the good fortune of meeting Jim Corbett, who was, are you ready, a Quaker theologian and rancher.
Oh.
And one of the founders of the sanctuary movement here in the desert Southwest of assisting Central American refugees to flee war and persecution at that time, with just completely risking his own safety and comfort all the time, and just blended these like fairly disparate aspects of himself, his deep spirituality, his love of the desert environment and conservationism, and some really radical social justice work.
Caroline, what is a daily habit that keeps you grounded?
I raise goats.
That's an answer I've never had before.
I have a herd of goats and a donkey, and I got them right before COVID hit, just serendipitously, and having every day to go outside twice a day, whatever the weather, 100 zillion degrees, doesn't matter, and be around critters and haul heavy things and breathe air has saved my sanity.
Oh my gosh. Farah, how about you? Daily habit? Any goats?
No, I don't have any goats, but I think that is awesome. I'm not sure how that would go down in my community here. But I love my dog. So that is part of my grounding every day. But I would say gratitude. I take time every day to think about what I'm grateful for in my personal life, what I'm grateful for in the world and at work. I'm also a mentor through New Pathways for Youth. So I spend a lot of time thinking about my mentee, and I'm so grateful for everything that he has for the world and how he's impacted my life. So yeah, I think it's just really important to stay plugged in with gratitude.
And Farah, if you had to describe change making in one word, what would it be?
Vision.
Caroline?
Try. Just try. Do the thing.
Yeah, just give it a go. I love that. Great advice. Yeah. Caroline, tell us where listeners can connect with you and follow your organization.
Yes, we have the website, Just Calm AZ. comaz.org, just com1maz.org. And we're on the socials at justcomaz on Instagram, and for us old fogies are on Facebook. And now we have a young social media person, so TikTok. And really, it's a great medium for us now because we're able to share these stories and models for like, hey, look at this. This is what safety can look like. This is what this community did. So yeah, we'd love to see you on the interwebs.
Farah?
And you can find us and learn about us at npfy.org. So that stands for New Pathways for Youth.org. And you can also find us on the socials. It's a great way to learn not only about what we do and the process of our program, but it's a great way to find out how you can get involved either through financial support, partnership, and also that's where you can learn about how you can become a one-to-one mentor or a mentor through our Level Up Academy program.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for sharing these stories. I'm so incredibly grateful to you. And we will be right back after the break with another story of how an organization working to protect our natural resources advanced their mission through rebranding. The world can feel so overwhelming right now, and that it is impossible to make a difference. I wrote the Changemakers Toolkit for anyone who wants to build a kinder, more equitable world, but isn't sure where to start or how to keep going. The book weaves together insights from so many incredible changemakers and offers a roadmap for driving impact in today's world. The Changemakers Toolkit is out now, and you can buy it anywhere books are sold. Let's keep building the world as we believe it can be. Okay, and now I am so excited to welcome to the podcast Christy Silverstein from Western Resource Advocates. Christy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And we had the honor of working with you and your team on the brand refresh that you guys worked on. And so I'm really excited to talk to you today about your experiences and what you learned. But before we do that, tell us, Christy, a little bit about WRA, about Western Resource Advocates, what you do and who you serve.
Sure. So I am the Marketing and Communications Director at Western Resource Advocates. We are a regional nonprofit organization fighting climate change and its impacts to sustain the environment, the economy, and the people of the West. So we use our deep and scientific policy analysis and highly effective legal strategies, pretty much every tool in the toolbox that we have to drive state action and create healthier and more equitable future for all of the communities.
Wonderful. How did you get into it, Christy?
So I have always had a passion for nonprofit work. So I've been doing marketing and communications for multiple decades. And so I was looking for a new role about 5 years ago with an organization that had sustainability top of mind, that was regional, that really was working at the state level to drive some of that kind of policies that we need to see in order for our future generations to have a better life for themselves.
Well, you found the perfect seat then. It sort of checks all the boxes, right?
Yes.
And then you spend a lot of time in the outdoors, just kind of on a personal level.
I do. So I live really close to Thunderbird Conservation Park, which is about 1,500 acres of open space and land. I can actually walk there right out of my driveway. So I spend a lot of my weekends hiking just outside in the outdoors with that open space.
Christy, one of the things I'm really interested to talk to you about today is the experience that you had with a brand refresh with your Marcom background. So you've been in Marcom for a long time for your career. And so you had a deep background in knowing the importance of how to tell stories and how to tell stories in a nonprofit setting. And I think that's sometimes a little bit of a different lens for somebody than someone who maybe they know branding and marketing is important, but that's not their background. And so that's something I want to keep in mind as we're having this conversation. But first of all, tell us a little bit about what prompted the rebrand for WRA and why at that particular moment.
Sure. So I had just started at the organization, and leading up to when I started for about the year before, we had engaged with an agency to do kind of a brand assessment to figure out really what our niche was, who we wanted to be talking to, really refine how we talked about our work, what really made us different than all the other conservation organizations out there. And so they
Mm,
had sort of all of this research and this material, but they hadn't really rolled it out to anyone, to any of the audiences yet. And so it was a great opportunity coming in to look at, okay, our niche is really in the beige rooms, working directly with policymakers, really trying to influence policies on the ground in those communities. And looking at our brand at the time and looking at our website and just sort of how we were telling our story, it didn't match up. So it's a
yeah.
perfect opportunity as we were going to roll out kind of this new messaging framework for our organization to also refresh our visual brand identity to go along with that.
And from your point of view, Christy, what are the biggest costs of that mismatch when the brand and the story doesn't align with your special niche and what you're best at? What are the biggest costs and losses that an organization might see?
Really hard to bring donors along in that
Mm,
storytelling. And I think just having kind of a mixed match between what your visual brand identity is, how you want to talk about your work, not being able to amplify the messaging, not really being able to showcase the amazing work that our policy folks were doing on the ground. There's some really smart people working on clean energy in Western lands and healthy rivers, and really wanted to showcase that work to the level of sophistication that they were actually working within, and
yeah.
having that kind of consistent visual identity that went along with that to be able to engage all of our different audiences.
Yeah, it's kind of remarkable actually how much that misalignment can cost you. I think of it as kind of a leaky bucket that you might be able to achieve some things. You might be able to carry some water, but if you have these holes where water's leaking out of the side, which is what a weaker brand can do, it just makes it harder to achieve what you ultimately want to achieve. And what we're all trying to achieve, changing the world, is hard enough as it is.
Yeah.
And so you don't need any extra challenges. So, Christy, what was the hardest or most surprising part of the process for you?
Being fairly new to the organization, coming in, and we had a 30 plus year history of all of our work, making sure that I was engaging with all of our different stakeholders and making
Yeah.
sure, sort of taking on this big task and giving people time to process what a new visual brand identity could look like, what they wanted to see out of it, really making sure our board and our key stakeholders, our staff who had been with the organization sometimes multiple decades, really bought into why we needed to change our visual brand identity, and making sure that what we came out the end with, that they were really satisfied with and felt really passionate about and wanted to continue to use those tools.
And did you get to that point at the end where everybody was excited about it and bought in and ready to share it with the world?
We did. And that was, I think, the best part was when you sort of
Yeah.
know that, yes, this actually resonates really well with all of our audiences. It wasn't an easy process. There were moments, where we brought three different logo options to the board to give everybody some input. They all thought they were voting on which one they wanted, but it really was just a kind of to placate or just get some input from them and open that dialogue. We went a slightly different direction for the final one, but we had to have some unveiling of
Mm.
sorts and make sure that they felt really good and really passionate before we actually opened it up to the full world, and have really, really strong plans in place for when you start to unveil that new brand.
Hmm. And how long ago was this, Christy? How far beyond the rebrand process are you now?
So we launched our new brand in January, February of 2023. So we are 3 plus years in.
And did you get to a point where you thought, yes, okay, this is working? All this work we put in, it is creating the shift that we wanted.
It's about halfway through that first year when
Yeah.
our donor publications, our website we rebuilt and redid completely with the new brand, but also kind of reconfiguring how we told our story as well. So it all went really hand in hand. And we were hearing from lots of different constituencies. So we were hearing from donors and from our partners, and everyone else was really excited about our work. And we heard from even another nonprofit that I think They loved our impact report and they love all of our publications. And then we actually entered a whole bunch of design awards because we just thought, we have to tell the story of how we did this work and the results that we've had. And so our publications have won multiple awards. Our rebrand process has also won multiple industry awards, which just made our team on the marketing and communication side really proud of that work and really kind of showcasing it. So I think that for me, knowing how much effort goes into even entering those awards, to be able to kind of win some of those top accolades really made me feel like this is working. People understand our brand. They see it. They really like it. They're showing their boards, our publications. Like, this is the type of thing we need to do.
Yeah. And as well as the awards that you quite deservedly received, were there other outcomes in terms of particularly actually donors? Because you had said, our old brand, it was like really difficult to engage with our donors. Has it helped you on the philanthropy side of things?
It definitely has. We've done surveys of our different donor audiences and asked them, what things do you like? Do you enjoying our publications? And they really do love our new rebrand. They feel like everything is clean and easy to understand. They really do like the design work that we do. We have a really great kind of design team in-house that is helping us showcase our work in the best way and really being able to tell our story really effectively with our donor audience.
That's awesome. Christy, is there anything you would do differently if you just had a do-over and you could do the whole process again? What would you change?
Ooh. I've done multiple brand refreshes for different organizations in my career. This one, I think, because of all the planning and all the different buy-in that we got from the different organizations, most of it went fairly smoothly. And we had a lot of plans in place for the rollout and making sure staff felt really proud about it. We sent them swag bags at home so they got to show off different pieces of the design. The one thing, which is such a small piece, is the font. We went with an Adobe font, and we are a Microsoft-based organization. So we love our new font. We wanted something new that was sort of modern, wasn't your typical font. But it has been a little bit of a struggle as we're going from Adobe with design work, but then trying to put those in PowerPoints and in Excel spreadsheets and showcasing that in Word design. So that's my one, think about the font before you absolutely settle in on which particular font you might want to use.
Well, what I love about that answer is it really shows that a rebrand is about capturing that essence of the organization and turning it into powerful words and visuals that are representative. But you do have to be able to use it. It's a practical tool, right? And you need to be able to use it in a way that fits with your processes and your systems. So I'm glad that you gave us something so specific. And actually, since we learned a lot together since we work together on a rebrand, we now approach how we suggest fonts to clients really differently because that's changing all the time. And you kind of fall in love with something and then you realize like, oh, this isn't available to us in certain places. And sort of similarly, if there's an organization, someone who's a CEO or an executive director or even a director of Marcom who's listening and they're thinking, yeah, we need to do a rebrand, what advice would you give them?
I would say make sure that you're engaging with all your different stakeholders and making sure, that was the one thing that I loved working with the Javelina team was they had sort of a structure to creating workshops and asking, questions about the work that didn't seem like it might be related to an actual rebrand, but really making sure that they understood who we were as an organization, what we were trying to accomplish with a visual brand identity. And so I would say, give yourself plenty of time, plenty of money, because you can't do it on the cheap. If you're really looking to do an effective rebrand, you want to be able to have all of the different pieces all kind of modified at the same time, and to really think about how you would describe your organization and be able to reflect that in a visual brand identity.
I love that. And what do you see, Christy, as the future for WRA? What are some of the big initiatives that you guys are going to be focused on? And what is the story that you're telling your stakeholders?
Sure. So hopefully we are not refreshing our brand. That was one of my caveats when we started the process was we wanted something that was going to last and stay around so that the organization sort of had this meaningful look. But we did just start planning for the next 5 years. We have a strategic plan to look at what will the world look like in 2030 and what are some of the big goals that we hope to accomplish within our region and within our organization. So really excited about transitioning to clean energy sources, working directly on healthy rivers and making sure our rivers are flowing and that we have enough water for all of our communities that live within the interior West. And then making sure all of our open spaces are protected and making sure that all of our future generations can access all of those things that we love about why we live here in the West.
And how does storytelling support your strategic plan and your strategic initiatives?
It's foundational to how we engage with all of our audiences. I think people really do care about the impact that we're having. It's and really at the level of their communities. So really being able to say, we protected this particular wilderness area, or we've helped put these protections in place so that this river, the Colorado River, can flow freely and that all of the states that are kind of vying over how much water they get have actually a plan in place that makes sure that we are looking out for the ecological systems that are dependent upon the river as well as the communities that they care about. So we have to tell that story in a way that engages our audience. Otherwise, it just becomes policies in beige rooms.
And what are the biggest things that are challenges or get in the way of that consistent storytelling? And then how do you get over those hurdles?
One of the hardest things about our work is it doesn't happen overnight. So advocacy and policy can take years in the making to actually, even just get passed and then implementing them effectively and making sure that the intended use of a specific policy actually is how it is going to play out and that you actually are seeing it go to, state parks or making sure that the rivers are flowing. And so I think being able to tell the story of these incremental wins that happen along the way is one of the challenges that we have with our work. And so how do you keep people engaged along in the process of this small little piece or even going backwards and why we need their support to be able to continue to move progress forward over the years?
Well, that's such a helpful insight because I think most of the people listening and the work they're doing, the same thing applies, that it's just not quick. It takes time.
Yeah.
When you're talking about social and systemic change, the stuff we're working toward, not only does it take years to create, but it takes another set of years to see the fruits of that labor. And particularly with policy, is you pass policy, you pass a piece of legislation, or you defeat a harmful piece of legislation. There's oftentimes this I shouldn't say oftentimes, sometimes it solves one problem and creates another set of problems. And so then you have to fix those. And so telling the story of the incremental wins. And I love that you and your team really invested so much time and energy into the storytelling of the rebrand itself. And so you didn't only see your rebrand as a way to help you achieve your other goals in terms of policy initiatives and fundraising, but more so, no, we're going to celebrate this. We did this really well. And so, let's really celebrate this piece. And that, I think, is a really, really powerful case study for anybody listening. So thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Okay, Christy. So let's get into our speed round. There are certain questions that I want to wrap up with. Let's start with, what is a great book that has informed your own change making?
I'm going to go with The Lorax, which sounds...
Wow, that's different than most answers. Tell me more.
So it's sort of a simplified way of, it takes every single person to make change happen. So it gives power back to the individual, that in order for the environment to change, for climate change feels so big and overwhelming at times, that just knowing that small actions that you can take individually, personally in your own life can actually lead up to a bigger kind of systematic change. So, and I'm a parent, so the Lorax sort of came top of mind as someone who just hasn't read big books, because I do a lot of reading. I read a lot of podcasts I listen to and a lot of stuff for work and this on the journalism side. So
yeah, I love that. And who is one change maker that inspires you, Christy?
So not your typical change maker, but something that just happened this week. The first female ultra marathon runner made history, actually here in Arizona, who ran Cocodono. Her name is Rachel. It's a 250-mile race. She was the first woman who won the entire race out of the top men and women, who came in 2 hours quicker than she did last year in this same race. And so the race just wrapped up on Wednesday of this week in Flagstaff. And so just seeing that woman and just sort of taking no for an answer, and had the world record for this particular course.
Wow, that is really inspiring. I think anytime that anyone takes on something really difficult and steps outside of maybe limitations that other people might put on them, it's really inspiring. So thanks for sharing it. And Christy, what's a daily habit that keeps you grounded?
So I have to move my body in some way every single
Same.
day. So
Same.
I have been running since I was in third grade. So I usually run, 1 to 2 miles a day at least. Getting outside, getting a workout in, doing something really grounds me in each day.
Wonderful. And if you had to describe change making in one word, what would it be?
One word is always tough, but I would say action.
Love it. Christy, how can listeners best connect with you and Western Resource Advocates?
Sure. So we do have a website, a podcast. We're on most of the social media channels, but the best way to reach out to me is likely on LinkedIn. So you can check out my profile there and reach out. I'd love to hear from folks.
Wonderful. Christy, thanks so much for joining us and for sharing the story of WRA's rebrand. I think you've given us a really different insight into how you can approach and maximize a process like this. And I'm just really grateful.
Thank you so much. It's been great to be on this conversation.
Hopefully, if you are considering a rebrand or a brand refresh, this gave you an idea of why it matters, how to start, some of the pitfalls that you might entertain during the way, and what you can do about those. But my biggest hope is that it really gave you an idea of how powerful a rebrand can be. I know it can be overwhelming, it can be a lot of work, but man, it can really help guide your organization toward the vision that you have for the world. And not only does it help your external storytelling positioning, but it helps your internal culture and your team's connection to the work as well. If you head over to javelina.co, we have a lot more case studies of rebrands on our website. We also have resources that you can use. We have blog posts about how to navigate a brand refresh. If you want to know more, you can always sign up for a free consultation on our website, and you can have a conversation with me or another member of our team, and we'll be able to ask you what's going on with you, why you're thinking about a rebrand or a brand refresh, and make suggestions about the approach, the timing, and give you an idea of cost and everything that's involved. I hope that this has been a helpful resource. If it has, please share it with somebody on your team or a board member, someone you think, you know what, I'd like to talk about this. Let's have a listen, and then let's talk about whether the timing is right for us. I will say that with a rebrand, it is all about the timing. And so definitely consider that. And that's something that we can help you figure out too. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, I cannot wait to share another story of change with you. I hope you have a great one.